In this episode, we speak with Siva Namasivayam, the co-founder and CEO of Cohere Health, a clinical intelligence company that provides intelligent prior authorization as a springboard to better quality outcomes by aligning physicians and health plans on evidence-based care paths for the patient's entire care journey. The company is backed by Deerfield Management, Polaris Partners, and other notable investors. Prior to co-founding Cohere, Siva founded and grew SCIO Health Analytics from $0 to $90 million with 20% plus EBITDA margins and 1,100 employees, and led the strategic exit at a valuation of $240 million in 2018. I am your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and the managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Great Entrepreneurs, a podcast for driven entrepreneurs and business owners. Our podcast covers all topics related to the entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to execution to optimization and to reaping the rewards of a well-run business. In the minutes ahead, we'll share with you unique insights and tactics from some of today's most accomplished and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Siva, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Good morning, and great to speak with you.
You have a very accomplished background, both as a founder and executive within the healthcare space. Let's start off with your most current company, the one you're currently scaling, Cohere Health. Please tell the audience the problem the company solves and the unique way it does it.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, again, once again, great to meet with you. Cohere Health, we focus on solving a very fundamental problem that happens today to almost anyone that visits the doctor's, physician's office, and if they want to get a procedure done. Anytime they need to get a procedure, whether it is a MRI or it is a surgery, or if they want to get some work done, they have to go through a process called prior authorization. It's usually the physician's office. They have to send information back to the health plan, and the health plan will sometimes approve it, or they might have to ask for more information. And there is potentially some back and forth that happens before the health plan approves that particular procedure. That procedure today, there is close to 250 million or so transactions that happen annually in the system today. And because of the cost increase and because of a lot of inappropriate care and waste in the system, it's only getting worse. On an average, such a prior auth process can take anywhere between 5 to 7 days. It can take up to 10 to 12 hours of a nurse or a physician in the office to be able to do that. And there is a lot of back and forth. The process can cost anywhere between $200 to $300 in net when you really look at all the way from a provider to all the way how much it costs a health plan. And it sometimes delays the care for the patient, right? So at Cohere, our goal is to, with the latest and greatest technologies, with AI and with applying clinical algorithms and AI in a very unique way, how can we make sure that we get these approvals almost at real time? In fact, by the time, when you go to a physician's office, they order something and then you go to the front office, we want to make sure that that thing is approved so that the nurse can tell you where should you go for your next checkup and which facility to go, etc. That's the problem that we are trying to solve. And so far, we are processing something like 10 million transactions right now today. And of that, I would say that close to 8 million or so, we are able to do that today, very uniquely, real-time approvals, get it going, right? We are doing it through a combination of automation, but also using natural language processing and aspects of AI, whereby all we ask is for like nurse to fax or send us the medical record and what is the service that's required. And we are able to read that, and we are able to contextualize what the patient's information is, medical information is, what is the service required, and we match it with what the policy is, and we are able to approve. So that's a unique part of what we do.
The problem you described seems like it's an obvious one that was happening. Maybe, it's been happening for probably decades. Why only now is it being addressed? Maybe how did you decide to tackle this problem? What prompted you to say, like, okay, we can create the right solution for this?
Yeah. Over the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years, the providers, a lot of the associations, they have been writing about it. There is a lot of research. And as you probably know, there is a lot of burden placed on clinicians. In addition to treating patients, which is what their main focus is, they spend quite a bit of time on non-clinical work like filling out the EMRs, paperwork, etc. So on an average, anywhere between 25 to 30% of a physician's time in a week is spent on all kinds of work that is not related to them practicing medicine, right? So that burden has been highlighted in many studies, etc. So when we start to really look at it, this is one aspect of it, right? This is again a significant aspect of their time spent. So that is one big problem. Second thing is that the problem has been pronounced in such a way that some of the studies have come about to say that, hey, it impacts the care for the patients. If somebody wants to get something, if they are in pain, you still are asked to wait for 3 or 4 days to get your MRI and then diagnose and things like that. And so the patient is painful, he is still feeling the pain doesn't go away. So those are the aspects that have come to light more recently. And there has been a lot of press about it. And the associations have been pursuing it. And now the federal government and state governments are coming up with regulations to be able to do that. It's just that the problem has been there for a long time, but it has not been highlighted. And second thing is that the latest and greatest technologies which have come about, those are really helping, right? Without that, you can't do this. The natural language processing and some of the AI things have come into fore only more recently. The applicability of that to solving very simple, problems like this have become more feasible in the last couple of years.
Now, this is the second company you founded. The first company, you were incredibly successful. The prior company is now public. How does the prior one, in terms of what it does and the technology involved, compare to Cohere?
It is an evolution. In fact, in my first one, that concept was actually, I would call the previous decade, where we saw a lot of data laying around, health plans and providers, everybody, they had created data, but didn't know what to do with the data. So that's where we came up with the concept of how can we put this data together and look at some of the business problems that the health plans have, and then let's try to solve the problem with that. So we took 2 or 3 use cases around finding out patients that, hey, it is potentially a high risk patient. So can you act on them much before, they had to go to hospital? So we came up with techniques like that. We had payments, like make sure that the payments are processed appropriately, etc. So once you start to integrate the data and once the processing power of the machines, right, make it viable as a business opportunity to be able to process those, right, in millions, the whole thing became very interesting. So we could solve more and more problems, right? So I would call that as version 1 or version 2. But the whole idea was that the data was there. So we started putting the data together. And in fact, I would say that when other companies and the entire ecosystem everywhere, they started actually processing the data, they started, you can do wonders. And that's how AI and machine learning and everything else evolved from the need to be able to process data and applying complex algorithms to that. And that's how it evolved. So think of it as a second generation application of the concept that I had pursued in my first company.
There's a lot of elements that go into becoming a successful entrepreneur and building a company and one that endures and, it's now public. What do you think your key strengths were in building that company? Were you product led? Were you particularly good at in terms of leadership and establishing a culture, recruiting people? Where do you think you particularly were good? And then did you have certain weaknesses that you hired the right people for?
I think one of the most important things I realized is that I'm not a Superman. I have strengths and I have weaknesses too. So my strengths are establishing a vision, clearly kind of understanding the client needs, market, and establishing a strategy to be able to go after that and how to execute on that. So, and then completely understanding that here are my weaknesses and go and hire the best people. In fact, I'm willing to partner and hire the best people who can do that, and being extremely humble in that they know more than me. And without them, I cannot do anything. So I would call that as one of my strengths, bringing people together with a vision and then letting them execute and not standing in their way. The weaknesses that I have is that I consider myself to be a visionary and bringing people together. I am not the best in terms of day to day, completely going into the details and executing like as an operator. So I have great respect for operators who can get things done. So I rely on them, right? Without them, I won't be here, right? So that's how I create the company.
Now, with the second company, Cohere, is it much easier than the first go round because you learned an incredible amount of things about building a company the first go round?
That's a very interesting question, right? There are quite a bit of things that I learned. So that has really helped me in terms of, hey, don't make the mistake again. Don't make the mistake again. Don't make the mistake again. However, circumstances change and there are always, see, the environment change, the market changes, all of them change, right? So you want to avoid some missteps, but you still do, right? It's not perfect, but does it help? Of course, it really helps, right? Much better than what I did in the last thing. And I went and almost cataloged all the mistakes that I make. And like I kind of think through on the weekends. In fact, one good thing I have done is previously I used to work and do all kinds of things heads down on the weekends. Now I take a step back and really think through everything that I did this week and what everything I have to do, what mistakes I made, and okay, how can I kind of make sure that it doesn't happen again? So things like that I try to solve like from my experience. So it has been helpful, but every circumstance is new.
Mm-hmm. Is there like one or two key insights, maybe key learnings that you would share with someone who's currently building their first company and scaling it?
Again, I go back to the first one. Understand your weaknesses. I didn't in my first company. I thought I could do everything. For about 2 or 3 years, I used to interfere in everything. And I was the problem, I would say. I didn't realize it, but there were very good friends I had who gave me the feedback. And then I also started to step back, let them do it. Then I found how successful it was. So I think entrepreneurs have to realize that they cannot be everything. They need a team. They need a great team. Some of them are much better at certain things than them. Realize it and give it to them, right? Again, I go back to that. That is so important. And the second important thing is that be humble. Everybody thinks that they are a Steve Jobs or a Musk or somebody, but you find millions of companies, millions of successful people, but you know, there's probably going to be one Gates and one Musk, but there are probably millions of people who do the normal things and still highly successful. So you need to kind of operate that way. Be humble because you haven't accomplished everything. And there is a long way to go. And you can fail just like that. For example, in the business to business market, you might think that great stuff with the client, and the client might have a major contract, but something might happen to the client, and overnight the client might terminate the contract, and you are just left with nothing, right? So just be more modest, understand the market, and try to like put the heads down and just execute and just keep on executing it.
I can imagine many entrepreneurs face this where they think they can do everything and they're not cognizant of their weaknesses and how to fix those weaknesses or, replace themselves in that role. But I also imagine it's hard to loosen control and give control. How do you start feeling that trust in people that you're interviewing and trialing for the roles?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. First of all, you have to be conscious about it, that that's what you are doing. And the second thing is that, so when you're interviewing, just make sure that you are getting the right people. But interviews are just like 2 hours, 3 hour max in terms of interactions. It's not going to tell you anything. It's just like interacting with them day to day. And I would say that reading people and figuring out who they are, it's a skill that comes over a period of time. It doesn't come overnight. So the first few times it took me like 6 months to understand and do that. But like after some time, it takes me about 2 to 3 months to really look at people, figure out what they are good at and what they are not good at. So my philosophy always is that everyone has flaws. So there is a reason why you have gone through, interviewing people and got them. So let's make sure that we give them a chance. Second thing is that try to figure out what their strengths are and ask them to focus on that first and give them an assignment and make sure that they can execute on it and they are delivering on it. I think they get more confidence, you get more confidence that they are able to do, and then there is always this weaknesses will come later, right? So I think there is a style in which you do it just comes to me, after now interacting with probably hundreds of people, it comes to me naturally, but it takes a long time.
And now that you're well into your second company, did you design a culture up front? Did you also do that with the first company?
Yeah, that's right. So there are 2 or 3 principles that I had, right? And this one, it's always with me. And like in fact, I started my career at Intel, and at that time, Andy Grove. Yeah, this is me out of college. Andy Grove was the CEO of Intel, and we had to go through rigorous training. Right? They gave a lot of management training. There are principles they had, like KPIs, for example. The whole KPI stuff came from him, right? Key performance indicators. The second thing is around constructive confrontation, because we deal with knowledge workers, technology, creative people, highly creative people. There are going to be differences. Everybody has their own idea. So one of the key things that how to create consensus out of it is very difficult. So he had techniques called constructive confrontation, right? And then last but not the least is he had things like only the paranoid survive. So I'm always on the lookout in the market for competitors, technologies, or anything else that truly can come in and completely take over. So I pay a lot of attention to it and try to come up with a strategy to be able to counter them, like, yeah, pretty much. And the other interesting thing and important thing that I do, because we are in business to business. So for us, the client is everything. So I keep on putting things like, hey, any client issue, I need to know. Internal issues, I don't have to. You guys are sophisticated, but clients are everything. They pay the bills. I want to make sure that I know and be paranoid about client issues and make sure that you solve them. So those are some of the key aspects of the culture that I always, wherever I have gone, right, I have kind of put in place. And that has really worked for me. For me, clients are number one, number two, number three, and be paranoid if they complain. So I think, and then look at it, look at the market always. Don't kind of dismiss any competition.
Mm-hmm. So you've been successful. What drives you?
Solving problems. So for me, every day I need to get up and there have to be new set of issues and how can we solve, right? And also big industry issues. It's not like small day-to-day issues, but it's big industry issues, market issues. How can we solve? How can we make progress towards that? That drives me, right? And then the second thing is that I'm very passionate about technology, analytics, etc. Anybody that can come to me with some interesting solution, creative solution, to be able to problem in the hand, right? I am a sucker for it. I truly like spend some time, try to understand, think about it, and then really try to see how we can bring that to the market, right? So those are the drivers for me.
And what's your biggest challenge currently in scaling the company?
We are going through a very interesting phase. We are not a startup anymore. For a company that is 5 years, we are getting into the mid market level, getting close to 1,000 employees. And there are a lot of things that have to happen. The fact that you have been successful from 0 to 1 doesn't guarantee success from 1 to 5. So Also, the people that got you from 0 to 1 are not necessarily going to be the team that's going to help you from 1 to 5. So it is a very hard thing to do because emotion, it takes a lot of energy out of you. Takes a lot of emotion. It is highly emotional because sometimes you have to kind of talk to the people that got you from 0 to 1 to say that, hey, they are not going to help us from 1 to 5. And how do you really, truly kind of change the culture while you are scaling up and bringing in a new team to be able to do that is a big challenge. You just have to live through it.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think, the work environment plays into it, meaning the physical work environment, hybrid versus more in person versus remote?
Very tough. We are a fully remote company. We got started during COVID, pretty much on the third day after. I can tell you, it is a challenge. We try to address it. We try to meet often, etc. But I think that there is nothing like, the management team getting together, spending a couple of hours solving problems, implementing it, following through, and then meeting the next day. I think there is nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it has been challenging, right? To be able to scale up companies in a completely remote environment.
Mm-hmm.
We are doing our best, but we can't go back because we have employees distributed around the country right now. In fact, I get my business partners to really figure out how we can actually make that engagement better and how we can truly simulate a physical environment.
We're coming up on time. Last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Yeah. I mentioned about my first CEO, Andy Grove. Like, people sometimes don't realize it, right? At that time, I used to go and sit in these classes and say, "What is this?" And then in Intel, you have to practice it. So I just got used to it. But he was such a genius in terms of management, right? Style. He was a nerd, but engineer, and but he came up with this management stuff, right? Which I think is now pretty much most of the technology companies and others follow in one form or other, right? So definitely a major inspiration for me.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Education. Education is a big thing for me because from my own personal thing, right? My parents used to say, study, study, study at the cost of anything else. And that actually lifted our entire family and entire generation. And I am a testament to that. And similar to that, I believe that education and making use of the opportunities, that is the only way that you can actually have an exponential advancement in life. The people that are poor, education is the only thing that it's almost like a complete step ladder with like 20 steps, right? It can take you from something there. Nothing else will do that. So with that, I try to actually support a lot of educational like initiatives, in some of the local communities, right? The neighboring communities, etc. There are places where people don't have laptops, people don't have books and everything else. So I try to make sure that I get them. I also try to help students with their college prep, how they can do that, etc. So I think I am of a complete belief that education is the ultimate differentiator in terms of lifting families.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, Siva, I want to thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.